Well, hello, everyone out there in podcast and YouTube land and Facebook land right now. All of you Starks, all you Targaryens, or in the case of Jon Snow, you Starkgaryens out there. And welcome back to The Row Knows Nothing, your Game of Thrones weekly recap from the Front Row Network. I'm Jeremy Geckner, the editor-in-chief of the Front Row Network. And I guess the Lord Commander
The Mad
here.
King.
Yes, the Mad King is definitely correct of this show here. And here with me, you just heard him, the host of Pop Culture Draft Night on the Front Row Network and one of the columnists for FRNpod.com, Mr. Phil Rockwell. What's up, Phil?
How's it going?
Nothing, man. I'm telling you, this. I got some feels to talk about in this episode.
It's. I was just feeling somber as I was sitting here waiting for you to link up. I was just kind of like, there's a sense of almost like the morning hit me. You know what I mean? Like they did such an incredible job of these first two episodes of reminding you how far we've come. All these characters' relationships and their histories, and that's been the emphasis of these first two episodes. And I've forgot all of my issues that I had with season 6 because they have just nailed the history of this show in these first two episodes. And I would say this was by far the most emotionally affecting episode in the show's run.
Yeah.
And I'm a little floored right now with how somber I felt when it all just kind of wrapped up.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of feels going on in this episode, but we will get to those after we introduce the third member of our motley crew beyond the wall, Mr. Scott McFarland. What is up, Scott? You made it in.
You couldn't wait the extra 20 minutes, I see.
Absolutely not, man. We have to get these. The emotions are running so high. We have to get them out. I mean, we have to get them out.
I have to say, Jeremy, that battle this week was amazing.
Hey, look,
and you were so adamant that it was going to happen. It was
not the first time I was wrong. Not going to be the last time. But if I had to be wrong, I'm glad that it was an episode like this one.
I told you.
Really set it up like that. So, okay, so we've got our crew here. Let's get right into it. This episode playing hard on callbacks to the entire series, playing hard on emotions and reunions and things that are really setting us up. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but it's not a crazy hot take to say this was the episode to get us ready to lose quite a few of our favorite characters next week. Because this is what stuck out to me. I mean, we'll get the specifics, but overall, I looked over at Sarah when we were watching it and I said, like, every single character's moment in this could be a fitting farewell for that character in this episode. And I mean, it was just all the stuff that was coming back. So that was my overall take. Scott, let's go to you. What did you think overall of the episode and the feeling you got from it?
Yeah, I mean, it was what I expected we were going to have happen because we haven't got all the reunions done yet. Now we have. Yep. I think the way they have this all set up now is kind of going with what we have assumed is going to happen, and that is that this is not going to go well, and everyone's going to be running south here in about an episode or two. But I do appreciate that some of the characters who have been looking for that have needed redemption continue to build upon that, and the characters who are completely worthless continue to be completely worthless. So they're consistent.
All right, then. Phil, you already said a little bit, but do you have anything to add about your overall impression of the episode?
No, I mean, I think I pretty much covered it. The amount of history they pulled from in this episode is just remarkable. When you consider how large this cast is, the number of from a writer's perspective, the number of combinations and intersections that you have to look at and go, well, which ones do we need for dramatic effect? And it looks like they just went, okay, we're just going to throw them all in a room and have it all.
There's so many times in this episode where there's just people we've never seen in a room together, people we've never seen have scenes together that are there all at the same time. Specifically, the scene in the giant fire room, or the room with the fireplace. That was one of the highlights of the episode for me. But let's get going right at the beginning here. Let's jump right in. Let's go to the sort of trial of Jaime Lannister here that opens the episode. Jaime is standing before, of course, Sansa and Jon and Daenerys, and they're all basically just doing the Inquisition on him about why he's there and why Cersei's army isn't with him. I gotta say, I really liked this scene. It never ceases to amaze me how much I root for Jaime Lannister, despite him being the jerk of all jerks at the beginning of the show. I just love the evolution that character has gone on through this series. And it was just a really nice, really poignant moment seeing Brienne stick up for him and reminding us of how strong that connection is between Jaime and Brienne, because I believe it was like season 2 or 3, I think season 2, when they were on the road together back to King's Landing. So I mean, that, like, I just love season 3. Thank you, Scott. So I mean, I love this scene, and I think that Emilia Clarke is doing some great acting in this too, trying to be political while also trying to show her rage at the same time. So Phil, let's go to you. What did you think of this scene?
The only thing that bothered me about the scene is the fact that Jaime's hot tub confession of the truth of why he killed the Mad King didn't come up, because he confessed that to Brienne. And I understand, the writers have to make choices, and that certainly would have thrown more chum in the water for the sort of Dany part of it. But no, again, everyone is acting their asses off, and that was the first point, right off the bat, where all these things are laid out in a line of the history that Jaime is. He threw Bran out a window. He had this interaction with Jaime, and this and this and this and this and this, and it all just sort of unraveled. And yeah, I think maybe this 16 months or whatever it was has shown that it really sort of we needed a reminder of just how far this show has come and how much ground it's covered over 8 seasons.
Yeah, definitely. Scott, what are your impressions of the mock trial of Jaime Lannister here? I'm
really glad it didn't take too long, because it would have cut into our drinking scene, which is the best part of the episode. Mm-hmm. But, everyone's character is correct in this. We continue to see Tyrion is completely lost his mojo, and is keeping relatively quiet through all of this. He stands up for his brother, but once he's pushed back down, he basically goes to the sidelines. The Sansa continues to blow in the wind, and every time a new gust blows, she flies somewhere else, which is normal for her. Sure. And so it just confirms to me again that Jaime is going to have plot armor on until he gets to King's Landing.
Really? Okay.
Because he has to see Cersei one more time.
See, now, Sarah would differ with you there, because her theory on this is that Jaime dies in Brienne's arms during the Battle of Winterfell.
Sure, if that happens in King's Landing, sure.
Well, there you go. Well, no, but you called out also, though, something that, so Tyrion gets knocked around quite a bit in this episode. And actually, he's been kind of knocked around quite a bit since season 6. I like that there's kind of playing with this crisis of confidence. And I like that they're giving reason to it now, because before we didn't know why he would make the deal with Cersei. Now we understand. He thought he was playing her. He thought that, she's pregnant. She's going to do things that she wouldn't normally do. And in that, he deluded himself. And I can't remember who I think it was Benioff and Weiss in the after the episode interviews where they said, sometimes clever people can be outsmarted by their own cleverness. And, like Tyrion just kind of was playing the game a little too hard there and made a bet on the wrong call. And I'm glad that we got that explanation because there's been so many rumors about Tyrion, about how he might turn and defend the Lannister name again.
That is the stupid ass rumor. That
I agree, but like it was.
I said it last week too. That is just that. I swear to God, I'm so glad fanboys don't write fiction for TV and movies because the fanboy theories are just fucking stupid.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, I like that even though Tyrion, you're right, because after Daenerys pushes back on him, he really can't say she's wrong. I mean, he's had a lot of blunders in the last in big moments in the campaign to retake Westeros. But I do like that, it seems like through the War Council and through the advice with Jorah to Daenerys that his standing is still there. But I'm really interested to see what his conversation with Bran does and what that can lead to his strategic thinking for the battle to come. What about you guys?
I think what it comes down to is the battle's going to wake him back up, much like Blackwater and the still one of my favorite lines. There's a lot of brave people out there. Let's go kill them.
Yeah, yeah.
I think when push comes to shove, and they did telegraph that he'll probably be down in the crypt sooner or later, and we know from previews and the fact that they're foreshadowing the hell out of it that there's going to be some fighting in the crypt, and I think that's where he'll make his stand and become the Tyrion we want him to be. Because again, I basically, if you're a Lannister, you're making it to the south. So he's getting out of this too. Plot armor all the way.
Phil, what do you think of Tyrion's role in this episode?
I appreciate that. I think you can go back farther with Tyrion. Essentially, ever since Tyrion put an arrow through his dad's gut, he's been making bad decision after bad decision, occasionally getting bailed out by the people around him, and making it to where he is just by the benefit of the people he's surrounded by. But I liked that they addressed he is a person who learns from his mistakes, and if you compare him to his sister, she would either say she never makes mistakes or she doesn't learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point that you make there. Ever since he killed Tywin, he has kind of been, getting bailed out every once in a while, because you think of the stuff in Marine and stuff too. The stuff he tries to keep the city under peace while Daenerys is gone doesn't really go that well. But I do think, though, Scott, you're right. I think we're finally going to get Tyrion back to where he is. I mean, the only thing better than tearing the heroes down is building them back up again. And I think Tyrion is still one of the best heroes we have in this show.
And I can't remember who said it, but one of the writers back in season 1 said that this was Tyrion's story. And it continues to be Tyrion's story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'll just say, Bran with the sick burn of the scene of Jaime Lannister there, the things we do for love. Branbot continues with the witty one-liners.
Oh my God. I can't wait for that kid to get some knife through his eye.
Let's dive into this too, because, Bran, he has a lot of cool parts in this episode. I really like that, Tyrion takes the time to listen to Bran's story. And, obviously Bran's part in the War Council scene is quite amazing. And I really want to break down that whole thing. But it does seem that we are setting up Bran as the confrontation of next week's episode with the Night King. And so many fan theories swirling around Bran right now. And it does seem like there's something a little bit more than just the, Mr. Spockness, three-eyed raven stuff with Bran. It seems like there's something more going on beneath the surface to me. Are any of you guys getting that feeling?
I actually got the feeling this is the first time where it seemed simpler to me with I don't know why it hasn't hit me yet, but when he's referring to himself, he's no longer referring to Bran Stark. He's referring to the three-eyed raven. So I all of these theories, to me, it just seems to me like it's the Night King and the three-eyed raven are like, if you go back to Lost, the the man in white and the man in black who've been
Jacob and Adam
for,
there, yeah.
Jacob and Adam who've been feuding forever, and so they've been feuding for all this time, and this is their their big moment of ending their long battle. The theories at this point, the more convoluted the theory, the more you have to put it up against the amount of time you have left to tell your story.
Exactly.
And the more I was concerned with the revealing of Jon Snow's lineage, like how are you going to do that, and still involve character and not make it this exposition dump that we already know the information.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a good job with that. But if you're going to have to explain, oh no, Bran is actually the Night King and there's time travel involved, and it's like they've done such a good job this season of just keeping things simple, and it's about the characters and setting up the pieces. So we don't have to worry about all this sort of, for lack of a better word, lost mystery bullshit.
Yeah,
we can. There's a reason why Lost got worse and worse as it went along.
Yeah, we can just be with the characters in this battle instead of all these plot machinations where at the end of the day, we don't care anymore. We care about the people. And these first two episodes have certainly, I've come back to the Lord in terms of this show where it's like, oh yeah, I love these characters.
Yeah.
And this is, I think after season 6 or season 7, I was like, I'm going to watch it because I watched it this far. This is the first time in 2 years that I felt I'm going to miss these people a lot.
Yeah.
After the last season, it's remarkable that I'm saying that.
I feel sorry for the actor that plays Bran because he's getting absolutely nothing to do aside from staring off in the distance and saying stuff. But I go back to the whole theme that I believe that this show is getting to is the breaking of the wheel. And since Craig's not here, I can make a Last Jedi reference, letting the past die.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in order for the realm of men to move forward and hopefully break this cycle of bullshit, both the Raven and the Night King are going to have to go bye-bye. And I think Bran's going to be going bye-bye sooner than the Night King.
Yeah.
Because I still think that the Night King is going to win this battle, and then everyone's going to run south. And Bran can, roast in his... or freeze in his wheelchair because there's nothing for this guy to do anymore. He's relayed his plot that he's going to relay, and the writers have no idea what to do with him. I agree. It's just completely. It's simple. It's simplistic now.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this when we did the draft. My feeling has always been, Martin has to be saying something to tell this whole story. And the big question that you see on all the websites is who ends up in the Iron Throne. Nobody. And my impression has always been the Iron Throne is going to be gone.
Yeah.
It's going to be gone.
I'm starting to subscribe to that theory a lot more. And then it becomes who's the best person to break that wheel. We've always been told it's Dany. Maybe not.
She proved to me once again she's not it.
I know.
But we'll get to that.
We're going to get to that in just a second because I definitely want
she's
to
proved
talk
to me
about
twice that she's not it.
3 times for me in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to say that I did like the like you reinforced, Phil, like the simplicity of the Bran character now in terms of like that meeting between Jaime and him at the tree, the sense that I don't care, dude. Like, this is all done. Like, you can help us here. And I loved his line though. And he's like, what makes you think there's an after this?
Yeah.
I really like that because the whole episode permeates that dread that's coming. And that was a great jumping off point. But let's get into Daenerys a little bit and let's talk about the scene that almost got there. It almost got there. Let's talk about the meetup between Dany and Sansa here. This was actually, I thought, a really, really good scene for both the actors. And,
it almost passed the Bechdel test. It did not, but it almost did.
Almost. It got there. It got close. But this scene, I was like, for anybody that finds Sansa a little bit annoying, I will throw myself in there. For anybody that finds Dany a little bit duplicitous, sometimes I find myself there too. This scene was great between these two characters. And it really, I especially loved Dany talking about, who manipulated who here. Like, I'm here because I fell in love with Jon, not the other way around. And I just thought that those were some great motivations and a great way for those characters to connect to each other, because both of them do love Jon in separate ways. And so I like.
No, I think you're grasping at so many straws right now. It's not even funny.
No, man, are you kidding me? Dany does, I believe, have genuine love affection.
No,
for Jon.
she even
And
joked
Sansa
about the
has
Sansa.
love
The
of a
last guy
sister
was
and a brother for
taller.
him.
The last guy was
Khal
taller.
Drogo, of course. Everyone's shorter than Jason Momoa.
This. Oh my God. Okay, continue down your path of wrongness. Go ahead.
Here, I have evidence for.
It doesn't mean it's not going to end bad, but I think she does right now at this moment. And when she decided to come north, had genuine love, affection for Jon.
I think
she wants her throne.
Right.
Sorry,
I think there's evidence in this episode when she is told who Jon really is. The first thing she thinks about.
Yep.
Again, I get that. I get where we're going with it. I get where we're going with it. At the time, that made no tactical sense for her to go north to fight the Night King if she wanted the throne.
Yes, it did. Because at the end of the day, she could have gotten her throne for about 5 minutes until she got ran over by zombies.
Yeah, but she could have taken it first, and then boom, everybody has it. The only logical thing that makes sense for her to go north is if she actually does care about Jon.
No, you're giving her way too much credit.
I think at best she talked herself into feeling that. I think when she came back, she couldn't just come back and scorch the earth. So I think I think there was value in joining with Jon, who had a reputation and was considered important to the North. And I think, the people, it was always told to them that they liked each other. Like, there was a lot of, in season 6 or 7, Davos was like, hey, he's something. And then Tyrion was like, hey, he's something. And that was the thing that there's a reason why we had 18 months of ick, considering their consummation at the end of last season, because there's something off.
Let's be honest, though. We have had 10 years of ick with this show.
Fair point.
It's a good point.
It was
the very first episode is incest, man. I mean, that sets it all in motion. But I mean, like in the specific context of the scene, though, is like it looked like we were finally getting through that kind of adversarial facade that both of these people put up, and then just right there at the end, though, Sansa's mistrust of Daenerys just continues to come through. Yeah. I will say this for this series, like for this season, they are giving us, I think this is more of a deconstruction of Dany's character this season, because she has been, one of the standard bearers. Let's not forget she did great things over in
she didn't.
No, she
didn't. She got a lot of people killed.
Yeah, and how many slaves are free because
how many times did she conquer something and then got everyone killed and then moved on and conquered something else?
Again, we have the hindsight of a lot of stuff, but when
you're using your hindsight to make her good.
Season 5, and she's setting slaves free. You're sitting there thinking like, oh, well, she's duplicitous. No,
she's setting them free in order to get an army.
Yeah,
she said only as soon as her brother got a golden crown, she has been doing everything to get an army.
So where are
that's
the slaves
it? Everything she's done
was just
is
to get an army.
Because it allowed her to build her base. Because it's that scene when she does free the slaves and the thousands of slaves come out and they crowd surf her across the crowd.
Yeah.
That's all about her building her ego and building her ability to lead in order to go do her thing. Everything I have said this since season 1. This character from the beginning has not been a good person. And anyone who thinks she's a good person is only doing so because the narrative is trying to tell you that. And she's not.
And she has dragons, which is cool. The thing. Here's the thing about Dany. I think it's interesting. I think she's more interesting now as this sort of, she's here, she made it, she's got dragons, she's become Ivanka Trump. to me.
Jesus.
She's kind of
People send the hate mail to Phil Rockwell.
No, look, she's kind of entitled. She has, since she's gotten to Winterfell, it hasn't. She's expecting people to come to her.
Yeah,
Mhm.
She's not like her reaching out to Sansa was the first time we see her.
And she failed.
And then and then Sansa asked her, "Well, what about the North?" And she's like, "Well, aren't you guys? You guys are going to work for me, right?" Oh, no.
Well, and
no,
I mean, again, Emilia Clarke is acting her ass off in this episode because the look she gives her is filled with so much resentment and rage of like, she thinks she's trying to meet her halfway. And like the fact that Sansa's unwilling to go the rest of it in at least Daenerys's eyes, like just makes her so enraged, but she still keeps it all under wraps. And I think the acting's amazing here.
And as somebody who beats up on Sansa a lot, I did all of last episode, and I just made fun of her at the beginning of this episode. This is the first time the girl has a backbone in a long time. Unfortunately, she will change her mind 15 minutes down the road. But right now in this scene, she's right. Well, because the whole idea is she doesn't want, I mean, she used to want to be queen. She's moved past that to the point it's like, I just want to not have to deal with your crap from the South over and over again. Can we have that happen?
Oh, I mean, like from where she was at the beginning of the series to now, you're right. Like she's really much more in the mold of her father now, wanting to stay in the North and, protect the people of the North. I think that that and mixed with her, like Brienne invoking the memory of Catelyn at Jaime's trial there, and with the return of Theon, you really start to see Sansa's layers start to come out a little bit more in this episode, which I really appreciate because I have liked Sansa, after the escape from King's Landing, and I thought that that character went on a very treacherous and brutal journey, especially with the Ramsay Bolton saga. So I'm glad to see that they're starting to get a little bit more complex with her and not just making her the bratty sister of Lord John, like what I'm saying. And I think that this scene really kind of helped expel that even a little bit more because you're right. She doesn't trust Daenerys. And now all of us are getting reason not to trust Daenerys.
You didn't have reason when she cooked prisoners of war last season?
Well, I'm not saying they haven't been setting it up. It's just it's all coming to a very big fruition now.
I'm making you the personification of people online, so I'm sorry.
No, I got you, man.
But the people who still try to defend this girl after she has killed so many people and made so many bad decisions is funny. And the people still think that at the end of the day, her winning is a win for people is amazingly stupid.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, I'll give you this, Scott. Like, I think that if I probably went back and watched a lot of her highlight episodes with the knowledge of what we're getting from her character now, I think I probably would watch it with a little bit more of a twinge of like, So I'll give you that. Maybe I need to rewatch it to get exactly where you were when you first watched him, because you're probably ahead of the curve there.
I do want to say about this, if I, and I'm not going to swear I'm going to do this, but if there was a scene that I could just do like a breakdown of, it would be this scene between Sansa and Daenerys, because Daenerys comes in this mode that we've never really seen her, like this the fact that she used these guys are uncomfortable with women's ruling as like this ingratiating thing when it was so it was clearly a play.
Yeah. And
Emilia Clarke and Sophie Turner just killed this scene. It's so well written. It's one of those scenes that's going to stick with me through this show. Is you have these two great, female characters playing off of each other. Man, I love that scene to death.
Yeah, definitely. And I will tell you though, like, yeah, it's interesting because, and Phil or Scott, whichever one of you said it, but you're right. Like ever since she got to Winterfell, it seems like there's just a disingenuousness there, like you're right. Like everything is a calculation at this point, a play.
She's playing the game.
Yeah. And like and I think probably that's why it strikes us so like crazy, because like, she hasn't ever really had to in this series. She's had her army, she's had her dragons, she's taken most of what she's needed by force. You're right, Scott, for the entire run of the show.
And she brought everyone in to do the politics for her.
Yes, exactly. And now she has to do the politics, and it's
not prepared
wildly
for it.
uncomfortable for her.
Which goes into the scene where she's deciding, to toss hands willy-nilly because she's pissed off that Tyrion's not doing enough of her. Which goes along with the whole fact is, I like the Ivanka thing. I want this. I want it now. Why won't you get it for me?
Well, let's hit the last scene that involved Daenerys as well. Let's hit the reveal that Jon gives her that he is.
Yeah,
of course,
she really loves her. Yes, I loves Jon.
Well, no,
yeah,
I don't.
Sure,
I don't
she
think
does.
that now after seeing that scene. But like you're right, like Jon telling her that he is in fact Aegon Targaryen, and that and you're right. Like her first reaction is very telling here. It is not a shock or oh man, we're related. Ooh, we slept with each other. No, it's
our kids are gonna have hooves.
Yeah, you have the rightful claim to the throne, and I think she does see him as a threat now, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, that's what you want when you go into a everyone's gonna die battle. Is
exactly.
So I may be doing this so that I can get stabbed in the back later.
That's what I was thinking. Is like, Jon, the reason why I like you is because you have no strategic thinking ability at all. You probably could have kept this one quiet a few more days.
What's the worst?
Yeah, that really evokes Tyrion's line during the War Council of season 7. Is just like, has it ever occurred to you to try lying?
Nope.
Nope. But that, again, great acting in this scene. I love that the camera stays on Emilia while he's revealing this information in much the same way that the camera stayed on him when Sam was revealing the information to him in episode 1. Really great instincts there by the director. But yeah, this is heading for a confrontation of epic proportions because, again, like I said, I'm subscribing to that theory that you are, Scott, that the wheel is going to be broken. You as well, Phil. And who's the best person to do that? Well, naturally, it's the guy who has never sought out power and doesn't really want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he's I guess that's always been my issue with Jon Snow. And I said this in the draft as well. It's like, I don't know why it's not clear what he wants. And it's unclear why he wants what he wants. Like, he seems to be this guy who's like, what's his motivation? Honor, integrity, Ned.
Yeah, I think it is Ned.
And it's why he's always kind of been stale to me as a character. Who, I mean, he gets to do plenty of cool stuff, but as far as being a dynamic character, I think he's one of the least dynamic individuals on the show.
This sounds like our Captain America discussion in the chat earlier.
Oh, you be quiet.
Yes, exactly. Not going
Lou
there.
is not here, so I don't have to yell at him.
Okay, well, let's get into my two favorite scenes of the episode, but let's go with first the War Council here, where we're devising our plan for the Night King and the Army of the Dead. Again, this is just such a cool scene to see all of these people right there around one table in Winterfell talking to each other. And, the strategy is pretty bleak here, it seems. Like Jon says, we can't really defeat them in a typical battle sense. And then there's this plan to lay this trap for him at the tree with Bran. So I don't know how this hits you, but like to me, it hit that there's going to be a lot of kind of gimmicky battle stuff that they're going to have to try to even stand a chance against the Army of the Dead. But it sounds like both of you think that this battle, while it's going to be thrilling, is probably going to ultimately end up with the Night King victorious. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, they foreshadowed again. When they asked, "Can Dragonfire kill him?" We're not entirely sure.
Nobody's tried. I love that.
You know what that means? You know what that means? It can't.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great line, though, and that's kind of where the Bran bot stoicness actually plays pretty well into that scene. Like, everybody's concerned, and he's like, "I don't know."
Bran's gonna get an ice harpoon through the head, and I'm looking forward to that
through
day.
The head, nice.
Well, could be his chest, but his legs wouldn't hurt.
Hey, if Infinity Wars taught us anything, it's that you go for the head. Phil, what are your thoughts on this scene?
I'm terrible about predicting like the grand strokes of a season. Mm-hmm. Like, I was certain last season the wall was going to fall in like episode 2. So I can't play this game because I'll end up looking like a moron.
Well, that's all we do on the network, man.
Speak for yourself.
But it's cool to see. How many times have we seen groups gathered around this sort of war table in different places, whether it's Dragonstone or whatever,
King's Landing, anywhere.
King's Landing. None of this is going to go the way they intend it to go.
Hardly ever does it? Worked out great for Danny and Stavros, I'll tell you that.
Has there been one battle on either side of the ocean that has actually gone the way it was planned out ever?
I do not believe so.
Well, if you were on Cersei's side,
last the Battle of the Blackwater, probably.
Well, that wasn't even planned out either.
Actually, no.
I heard her dad came and saved her ass at the end.
Last season, when what did they used the one place as like a goof, like they sent all these people to
the Casterly Rock
Casterly Rock,
and then they went and took Highgarden.
So that went pretty much the way I expect Cersei to go. It just happens that we're not.
I guess Cersei did pull one over there.
It wasn't her point of view chapter, so we didn't quite.
Exactly.
We didn't get the victory in that one.
Yeah, well, aside from the War Council, then obviously Theon.
Well,
no, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree that we've seen these kind of around the table, and sometimes we've seen people on the table. But this is, I realized this watching this, that this was going to be the last filler episode, because this is the first time we've had all of these characters that some of them have never met, their narratives coming together for the first time, which is, the whole point of that scene and the whole point of the next scene you're going to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And I did just love, though, again, like you're right, this episode is full of callbacks to like kind of the greatest hits of Game of Thrones here, the stuff that we remember the most, and bringing it back to redefine characters' motivations, like you said. And I thought in this scene, I loved that mixed with his arrival at Winterfell, I just love that Theon is back now. I think that the last vestiges of Reek have finally left, and that he is back to being Theon himself, Theon Greyjoy. And the idea of him volunteering to defend Bran when he took the castle from Bran and caused so much havoc in the north and made Robb weak enough that he could be killed at the Red Wedding in terms of a commander. I just really, really appreciated that. And I love that Alfie Allen is getting to come back to life, that Theon has come back to life in this scene. So anything else on that before we get to what I loved the most about this episode?
Well, when you finally reach redemption status, your plot armor comes off. So say goodbye to Theon.
Yep. Oh, Theon.
And there's a few others too, including Arya. Say goodbye to Arya.
You might. Well, we'll get to that. In a second.
She also made the Friday the 13th mistake.
Actually, yeah. Before that, let's do that. Like, was anybody creeped out by sexy Arya here? Because
here's the thing
she's an adult, but we've watched her grow.
And I think that's the thing. We realize that Maisie Williams she's a grown woman.
She is of age.
But we are watching.
HBO reminded us.
We are watching that character, and I can't think of another example where we've watched someone. What, she was maybe 9 or 10.
Yeah, I was thinking like
the Olsen twins. That's about it.
Yeah, and we would have been as creeped out if something like that had happened on Full House.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I guess there's some consolation that it's Gendry and that there's a history there, but it did kind of take me aback a second. I was just like, oh God, there's Arya.
It's the first time I've seen a bodysuit in Game of Thrones. So
yeah, right.
The thing about Arya that I've appreciated these last 2 episodes is it shows she's not just a robot, killer robot. Now they've brought some humanity to her, and you can't get much more human than that sort of interaction. And it's another case where it's a character with a history and proper motivations. And so as sort of startling as it was, it was a scene that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree actually. So,
and that's why she's going to die.
I believe I did draft her.
Her weapon, is it just a spear?
Yeah,
I think it's kind of like a bow staffy thing that she fought the waif with a bunch, right?
it's a long stick. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with dragon,
Maybe she'll go blind again.
She need to draw a picture of it.
That really
Yeah.
was the worst season of the show.
Yeah, well, luckily we don't have to revisit it on this episode because we're going to talk about the drinking scene. This was so amazing in every single level, from Tyrion making funny faces while giving Podrick a full cup to the Tormund saying "fuck tradition," which was probably my favorite line of the episode. And I'm telling you guys, I mean, the tears came out for the knighting of Brienne. Just an amazingly well shot scene. What were you guys' thoughts on this entire collection of scenes in the room?
Well, again, I go back to the once you've reached your peak redemption, your plot armor comes off. Sarah's thinking that Jaime's going to die in her arms. No, she's dying in Jaime's arms because Jaime's story isn't done yet. Brienne's story just ended. Seriously, that's what she's wanted. She has wanted to be seen as an equal to the men.
Now
she's now commanding the flank of the army. She'll be doing that next episode. She's now a knight. Her story's over. Her plot armor comes off.
Don't say things like this, Scott.
Well, she she was one of those people where I called us soft at the end of the draft because Brienne wasn't drafted.
I don't think Podrick was either.
Oh, Podrick. Oh, yeah.
Christian. Somebody took Podrick? Okay, good.
Christian was like, oh, Podrick's toast. But I think the thing about this episode is we are getting all these sort of final moments because they could wipe out. Well, there is no red ink on the draft board so far.
No, nobody took the young Umber, so
a week from now,
the Night King did.
Yeah,
a week from now,
little Umber.
That's gonna be way different.
Oh yeah, the draft board's gonna have a lot of red on it next week.
And the fact that they were able to give everybody all these little scenes, Davos with the girl when he's serving food, the knighting of Brienne,
Jorah with Lady Mormont with that was a really great scene to me too.
Yeah. It puts who's not on the block at this point.
No, you're absolutely right. I think they put everybody on the block this week. I really do.
Those who are not on the block are Jon, Daenerys, Jaime, Tyrion, Jorah, because he still has to be redeemed. That's about it.
Well, either way,
Sansa just because I don't like her, so they'll keep her around.
Well, and I'll tell you this. The scene had a lot of great highlights, though, too. I mean, it's strange to me. Like, there's always like that love triangle aspect between Tormund and Brienne and Jaime and such. But I always get the sense that Tormund doesn't really think that deeply about his pursuit of Brienne at all. I know
really,
that's a shocking
statement
to say. But I love that after she was knighted, they went back to him clapping, and he looked like a giddy kid. Like his friend just did something incredible. It didn't seem romantic at all. He was just really happy for Brienne. And I don't know. It's just, I love the simplicity of Tormund. And I love, the story about, nursing on the giant and everything. It's like Tormund just, what they did with his character is what you guys have said this whole time. They reminded us this whole episode why we love these characters and why these characters are going to be terrible to when we lose them eventually, probably as near as next week. And I think that this scene in particular did the best job of that.
Oh, sure. And it's, it's a very basic, it's food and drink and eat. It's the shelter. It's the last moment of shelter for these people, just at a basic human level, and the amount they were able to mine out of out of a bunch of people in a room. Nothing fancy.
I will argue till the blue in the face that some of the best film is a bunch of people in a room. 12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men.
What is it? 5 Characters in Search of an Exit. Twilight Zone.
Glengarry Glen Ross. Sure.
It's interesting that you bring that up because this is my big question. After watching this episode, is you have so much human drama packed into people talking to each other. When it just becomes like blood and guts on the field, do you think there's a certain amount of deflation that happens? Because that isn't that, just blood and guts is not as rich as these people with long histories and deep relationships sitting in a room going back and forth.
I'll tell you why I think it does matter more this time. And it's because I think we've clearly defined what all these people are fighting for. In the past, I agree, it's been a lot more personalized death. It's been a lot more out of nowhere type stuff. But this one, I think now we have a joint mission for all of these people who, and if you'll remember, it was Tyrion who said it in the room. All of us at one point or another had fought against the Starks, and now here we are in their castle ready to defend them. And it's just an interesting dynamic there, and it reminds you of how far these characters have come and the journey we've been on with them. So I think that I totally understand your point there, Phil, and I think that is a very apt point to say. But I think now that we have the stakes clearly defined for every character, and we've been reminded in this episode of how far they've come and why we like them in the first place, I think that makes what the ensuing battle is going to be even more emotionally stakeful for us, the viewer.
I will just be more interested if a week from now we are talking about the losses that we suffered versus the staging of these massive.
I will totally agree with you. Totally agree.
Well, and that's kind of been the MO of this show. I mean, the battles that come are very cinematic, but they hardly ever take up a whole episode. And it's usually, and this is why even the seasons, episode 9, everyone dies. Episode 10 is cleanup. It's the same idea where you get those character pieces. The difference is, I think the writers are starting, and I made this comment last week. This show, like many shows, it falls into the trap of we have a plan for 4 or 5 years, and then, oh God, it's a huge success. We need to make it 8.
Well, also
in this case, we actually break up. Well, if you're expecting Martin to put out the rest of the books before he passes away, I'm sorry, it ain't happening. You're gonna be like a Foundation fan who's still waiting for those Foundation books. They ain't coming. Yeah, but so now we got into a point where the writers have finally an exit point that they're moving towards. So we get to have good writing again. So no more filler, like Arya being blind. No more filler. We're okay. We're moving forward. And I love when shows figure this out. And some of the best shows are the ones who never lose track of this. Unfortunately, this show did, but they're back to it. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'll get the scene has a very interesting cap off for pretty much the entire episode. I mean, the only thing we get after it is the Jon Daenerys scene, and then the look at the White Walkers at the end. But I loved the idea of Podrick singing the song and doing the montage of people getting ready for the coming battle. To me, it felt very Titanic, the "Near My God to Thee" sequence, when the inevitable end is coming and you just get to see so many different people and how they're preparing for it. That might seem a little cheesy, I get it, but there's other examples of that too. Lord of the Rings, when Faramir is riding off.
If anyone winds up on a door and they get pushed off the door for no apparent reason, then we can make a Titanic reference.
Man, we could do that. They could play cards up there. Who knows?
That heartless bitch let him drown for no reason, and then she forgot about her husband.
She'd fit right in Game of Thrones, man.
I love how both episodes so far this season we've made Titanic references.
That's
Keep it
true.
up.
But I mean, like,
I really don't like that movie at all.
Did that sequence hit you guys the same way as it hit me? Because I just thought it was a really gorgeous song. It was very well sung, and just again, all the scenes we see of these characters, and I think to myself, I could see them dying. I could see them dying next week. I could see them dying next week. Like the whole episode felt that way to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very. I almost wish they had cut it before they showed the White Walkers. Maybe just go up over the wall and we see the forest, and then we don't get the ratty horsey leg shot. But yeah, it was a nice cap on. They had done the work to get away with a montage at the end.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel like, oh, we couldn't get to this, so we're going to show you this, and this. It was essentially we knew where these people were going, and we're showing these are where the pieces are placed going into the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, you have any thoughts on that musical sequence?
Again, I mean, it's a culmination of a show, and they're finally moving towards an exit. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And a lot of them aren't going to make it out of this one, but I've already listed off those who will.
Yeah, you have. That leads me into a bit of a question. So obviously the episode ends with the White Walkers. We don't see any whites. We don't see the Night King. But I'm guessing he's going to show up on Viserion somewhere. But so that was how we ended this episode. The preview for next week looked very action packed, but I like that they didn't give too many shots away. I didn't want them to keep it general, keep showing me characters yelling at something. I don't care. I don't want to see a ton of shots from a battle episode. But let's get in some predictions here. I know, Phil, you don't like to, but let's do it. Look, come on. Who do we think is ultimately biting the dust next week? Because there's a lot of main characters on our draft board that are up for grabs next week. Scott, you already listed who you think is going to survive. So if you had to pick two people you know are dead next week with ultimate confidence, who are you picking?
See, now I'm blanking on people's names. Big girl.
Brienne.
Brienne, thank you.
The big
Brienne's
woman
dead.
that Tormund calls her. So
Brienne's dead. Again, if you got your redemption in this episode, there's no more story for you. So I also think that Bran is going to be toast because he didn't get redemption, but he's just a boring character. And I would not be surprised, and I'm breaking your rule and doing 3. I would not be surprised if Arya didn't be toast next week too.
All right. Look at that. Phil, what about you?
I can't even handle the idea of Arya being gone for the last 3 episodes, but I think the frontliners are the ones that we're gonna lose. So Brienne is a strong possibility. Grey Worm, I think, is all but inevitable. I think they're going to take a shot at somebody big very early. Like they're gonna drop somebody quick to really establish no one is safe.
Yeah.
I think that might be Brienne.
That's an interesting.
She's on the front lines on the flank. That's not a good place to be.
It's kind of like what they did in Infinity War, right? Like you establish Thanos as the threat by having him kill Loki, kill Heimdall, all these people that we like. So I agree with you. I think that's an interesting idea there to really show the stakes of this battle by killing someone big early. I am totally in agreement with you, Phil, because the scene between Grey Worm and Missandei in this one just seals Grey Worm's fate. I think you're making plans for the future, man. You ain't good. You ain't getting out.
I do love the fact that this show is starting to finally realize, and you don't have to whitewash a fantasy show. Unfortunately, a lot of them do. They're finally realizing we didn't have any black people in this TV show, and this is kind of bad. I'm glad they're finally realizing that.
An interesting scene there, but I think that I definitely think Grey Worm is down. I'm starting to see the merits of Brienne. Oh, man, and I know you don't think Jorah is done, but man, it looks like he's going to be right there out front, and I don't know how he doesn't. I mean, like he seems like a pretty prime candidate myself as well, especially if they're going to keep Tyrion as hand of Daenerys.
No, so. I think his story is going to end by making those last few people who think Daenerys is a good person realize she's not, because she's going to have to get rid of him somehow, and it's not going to be at the battle.
Well, interesting.
He does have a legit Valyrian steel sword.
Yes, he does.
In his favor.
He does have a real Valyrian steel.
Can I just
go ahead,
Scott.
You were talking about swords. The other thing we got to figure out is sooner or later Lightbringer's got to go to somebody else, because the dude with one eye is not going to get to keep Lightbringer.
Beric, I guess he's a pretty strong candidate to die this time.
Our number 1 draft pick.
Yeah,
he may die another 15, 20 times, but he's got the one sword that. He's got the one sword that's like been in like the destiny of everything, and that dude has not been given enough time to have that sword.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really dug about this episode is the dragon glass being everywhere.
Yeah,
on top
of
just forget the fact of how they get a hold of all this, but I loved how it's all along the edge of the balconies, and they have these barriers set up with dragon glass.
They got like trap bridge doors too, man.
Yeah,
but yeah, I agree. It looks really good, and it's really smart of them. But I keep going back to, unfortunately, scenes from Notre Dame last week. You're in a big stone oven, and he has a dragon.
Nice dragon.
You don't have to go over the parapets if you just nuke them from the inside.
That's true.
Or from the crypt, which is what they're going to do.
Which is going to be interesting about when the Night King actually shows up in this battle, because obviously that is the equalizer, and we haven't seen the dragons in this episode either. So,
well, and the other thing too is the Night King is probably a Stark, so he knows Winterfell well. And again, they keep foreshadowing. They've been foreshadowing it for several episodes now. The way they're going to get into it is they're going to get in through the crypt. So he knows that area more so than anyone else because he was living there 1,000 years ago.
It's a good theory. All right. Anything else on this episode before we wrap everything up?
I love that the toast between Jaime and Tyrion was to the perils of self-betterment.
Yes, what a line.
I may have that tattooed on my body at some point in my lifetime. I loved that line.
But that's why this story is about those guys, because they've had to actually change in order to make change. And a lot of people in the show don't, but they have.
Yeah, they totally have. And I have to say, I love Tyrion calling out his brother too, like, oh, she fooled me worst of all. And it's like, no, you've always known what she is, and you loved her anyway. I love that he didn't let Jaime off the hook there. And then I love that Jaime didn't kind of like get defensive about it. He knows, he always has known what Cersei is, and yet he was able to be manipulated by her like that. So yeah. All right, everyone. That's going to be it. That's going to do it for this episode of The Ro Knows Nothing. We are preparing for epic battle next week. And I think that we are going to have a full house here on The Ro Knows Nothing. I think a lot of people are going to want to talk about episode 3 of season 8. So
I'll just drop in like Harold Letterman in between rounds just to give the tally of who we lost from the draft.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of our plan. That's part of our plan for The Ro Knows Nothing, but unfortunately, Phil has not been needed for that so far because the draft board is still dry. And come on, man. But that's probably going to change next week. So if you don't want to miss an episode of The Ro Knows Nothing, find us online, frnpod.com, or search for the Front Row Network on Facebook and Instagram, and Front Row Reviews with a Z on Twitter. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you already know where we are, but you can search for the Front Row Network on YouTube as well. All right, guys, look, coming up next on the network, it's Avengers Week, people. Endgame is coming out. We are going to be having our redefined rankings of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all 21 movies, and, of course, a Get Hyped episode for Avengers Endgame. And then we will, of course, be bringing you the full disclosure on Avengers Endgame. And, of course, do not miss our big announcement on Friday. A huge thing happening for the Front Row Network that you will not want to miss live on our Facebook page. Guys,
should I spoil it right now?
Go?
Should I spoil it right now just to piss you off and piss Craig off?
I mean, if you want to deal with Craig, go ahead, I guess. But you've dealt with him your whole life, man.
I've been pissing him off my whole life. Just with Endgame, everyone lives. The end.
Yep, Scott's going for that Eccleston ending, people. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of The Ro Knows Nothing. For the Front Row Network, I'm Jeremy Geckner.
I'm Phil Rockwell.
I'm the guy who pisses off Craig.
God bless.
The guy with all the great send-offs. And, of course, we will see you in the front row.